I think any of us who are 40 years or older can certainly relate when we say we made some pretty stupid mistakes when we were in our 20s. Today, I want to talk about my 5 dumbest financial mistakes from my 20s. Things that 40-year-old me could go back and kick my own 20-year-old self in the butt if I knew then what I know now. I'd like to share my experience with you so that you can be smarter than me in your 20s and 30s. Mistake number 1, and I mention this on my channel a lot, and that is buying too many processed foods and eating too much fast food. Now, in my 20s, I did this for a couple of reasons. One is I had not yet developed cooking skills. I will say it was a lot harder to learn cooking skills then than it is now, because you guys, if you are in your 20s and 30s right now and you are learning to cook, you have YouTube. It is a fantastic free resource to help you learn how to make literally anything, and how to, if you find a recipe, for instance, braising or whatever it might be, whatever technique, whatever cooking techniques you want to learn, you can easily learn that from the internet, from YouTube especially. So your generation has that. So take advantage of it. And learn how to cook. Learn as much as you can, because cooking will save you a ton of money. And I wasted way too much money in my 20s and 30s on processed foods because I was afraid to cook. It's easy maybe for 40-year-old me to say, because now I have good skill built up. And in my 20s, I think I shied away from cooking from scratch because, for one thing, I had no idea how to cook from scratch. I knew some few basic things from my home ec class or something, but learning to cook takes time. And fortunately for your generation, it's much easier now because there's YouTube. You can literally just search and you will find a video showing you exactly step by step how to do whatever it is you're trying to learn. And I talked about this in another video, and I'll pop it up on the screen so you can see it. But I was looking for yellow potatoes the other day at Sam's Club, so I typed in potatoes at the search bar, and I noticed that boxed mashed potatoes and boxed hash browns, processed potatoes, came up at over $4 a pound versus fresh potatoes, which were only 59 cents a pound. Okay, so that's a no-brainer when you see it like that and you're like, wow, what a difference. So if you are consistently eating processed foods, you are consistently overpaying for the same volume of food. And then the other thing is that a lot of what is contained in processed food is just filler ingredients to keep the cost down. You're not even getting good quality, nutritious foods. A lot of it is just chemicals and additives to keep it on the shelf, to keep it good forever. And companies are trying to cut corners and make their product as cheaply as they can so that they can maximize their profits. And they don't care about your health. So go with whole, nutritious foods that you can process yourself in your kitchen with less additives, because potatoes are supposed to go bad. They're not supposed to last forever on your shelf. And especially when you look at the price difference. I mean, I couldn't believe it. $4 a pound for processed potatoes. Just get a bag of potatoes and make them yourself. That's going to save you tons of money. And that's just potatoes. If you look at every single processed ingredient that you buy and you do the math, the savings are astronomical. And then too, it also benefits your health, which I definitely took for granted in my 20s. 20-year-old me thought that this was normal. It thought that since companies were making this food to be eaten, that it should be eaten. And 40-year-old me trusts the system a whole lot less. And I will not buy processed foods. I try to keep it to a bare minimum. And I really dislike fast food for exactly that same reason, because you are not getting high quality, nutritious foods when you go to a fast food restaurant, even if it's marketed as being healthy. Just look at the sodium content. Get the nutrition menu the next time you go to some place that you think is healthy. I don't care which one it is. I don't care which restaurant you think is super duper healthy. Go pull up their nutritional facts and look at the sodium column on what you're about to order. Because healthy adults should not have more than, say, 2,000, 2,500 milligrams of sodium a day. I just about guarantee you, you can't get out of any fast food restaurant, or any other restaurant for that matter, without at least consuming 2,000 or more milligrams of sodium in a single meal. It's bad for you. It's bad for your heart. It's bad for your health. That is one thing that 40-year-old me, if I could just go back and tell 20-year-old me, 40-year-old me might be very different. Mistake number 2, buying too many clothes and CDs. When I was in my 20s, every dollar I made, I thought of in terms of what clothes could I buy. I got so excited to go to the mall and buy something new for myself. I loved clothes when I was in my teens and 20s. And I wasted so much money on that. And I also, I'm showing my age right now, but I also used to enjoy buying CDs. I loved music. And of course, back in the day, YouTube was not a thing. And you could not easily get whatever music you wanted to listen to at your fingertips like you can now. So basically, I made these spending mistakes in my 20s because 20-year-old me had no real life experience. 20-year-old me had no idea what it takes to build a financial future. 20-year-old me did not understand that every piece of clothing, every CD, I didn't buy video games or books. I mostly went to the library. At least I had that going for me. But if you, makeup. Makeup was another big one in my 20s. I spent a lot of money on clothes, CDs, and makeup. And I know a lot of youngsters spend a lot of money on things like books or video games. And those would also be in the same category, although I wasn't into those things personally. But these foolish things that we spend our money on when we are young, because we do not realize that every time we buy those, that is money that we could have saved for college, we could have invested, or at the very least, we could have bought something that's going to give us something more substantial. And so if 40-year-old me could go back and explain to 20-year-old stupid me that I was spending way too much of my Christmas money, and I was working since I was 14, and a lot of the money I spent went to those types of things. And I could have had lower student loans. In my 30s, I struggled like crazy to pay off my student loans, and I understood my mistake, but it was too late. So that's why I'm sharing this with you. I'm hoping that some 20, 30-year-old out there who is probably not making those mistakes in your 30s. But if you're in your 20s, especially, or possibly your teens, don't do it. Do something better with your money. Do not spend it on those things that just don't have long-term value. Those things have short-term value, incredibly short-term value. And so if I had saved more of that money to help me to pay for college, that would have been very helpful. Or even something more valuable, like another option, even if I could go back and reinvest that money, even if I wasn't wise enough to save it for college, at least maybe spending it on travel would have been much wiser. And so here's the interesting thing about my 20s is that looking back, I spent a good chunk of money. I saved my Christmas money 1 year when I was in high school, my junior year of high school, and I saved for a trip to Poland to visit a friend of mine that I made the summer before. I made friends with her at my job. I worked at Cedar Point, which is an amusement park in Ohio. I worked with my Polish friend the summer before, and she invited me to come visit her the following year. I spent the entire year learning Polish. So I learned something from this desire to travel, and I saved all of my Christmas money as well as all of the money that I earned. Of course, I had to pay for my car and insurance, and things like that. I had some expenses, but every penny that wasn't designated for those type of expenditures through the school year was saved for my trip to Poland. And although I spent probably close to $900 on the ticket, just shy of $900 on the ticket, and I didn't have a lot of expenses when I got there because her family took very good care of me while I was there. So I really had very few expenses once I got there, but it was still, for someone who's 18 years of age and a junior in high school, it was a good chunk of money. But interestingly enough, I do not regret spending that money. In fact, if I could have spent more money in a similar fashion, I think that would have been a much better use of my money, looking back, than buying all the clothes and CDs and makeup that I was spending money on. Because those experiences last a lifetime. And if you are over the age of 35, you will be able to understand this. As you get older, you just do not have the time. You have things that are tying you down, family, and especially children and your spouse, jobs. You cannot travel the way you can when you're in your 20s and when you're really young. That's sort of a once in a lifetime window of opportunity to really travel and enjoy that if you want to. Other than perhaps also maybe when you're retired. But by then it's a lot more physically difficult. So your 20s is a great opportunity to travel. So if I could go back, I would either reinvest all that money that I was spending on the stupidest things ever, such as clothes, CDs, makeup, video games, books, all that kind of stuff, especially since books aren't really a stupid thing to spend money on, but you can get those from the library. You can get those in other ways. You don't need to buy them. Anyhow, it makes me a little bit physically ill if I really sit there and think of how much money I could have saved and reinvested in a much better way in my 20s. So yeah, if 40-year-old me could go back and kick 20-year-old me in the booty about that, I absolutely would. So I'm sharing that with you. So the third thing that I regret doing in my 20s was living on campus. I think going to college is a great thing, but living on campus, especially where I went to school particularly, was so expensive. And I was required to live on campus for my freshman year, which I don't really agree with fully. Because my meal plan, when I really go back and I look at that, it was outrageous to eat on campus. And it was outrageous to live on campus. And as an adult, I should have never been required to live on campus, if you ask me. As an adult, I should have not been required to live on campus ever. Okay. But I didn't live off campus even after my freshman year because of the convenience. And again, it was the reason why I took that convenience is because I didn't really realize the effects that was going to have on me later in terms of student loans. Okay, my student loans could have been much lower if I had just lived off campus. Yeah, I could totally kick myself for that decision. That cost me thousands of dollars. And I wouldn't have necessarily had to live alone. I would have, the smartest thing I could have done was to try to find some roommates and share the cost of an apartment or a house. There were tons of houses for rent near the college, to share the costs of living off campus with other students and to cook at home rather than going down to Convo and getting a meal there. If I could go back and do it over again, I would have saved a lot of money that could have been used in my 30s and 40s to make a better future for myself. So I'm just sharing that. I'm just putting that out there. Anybody who is currently a student, that's just something to consider. Number 4 would be just the fact that I really didn't take financial basics as serious as I should have. Meaning frugal living was not as much of a priority as it should have been for me. I think everybody says this, but I should have invested earlier. I didn't make investing enough of a priority as early on as I should have. And I spent too much money, as we mentioned, on those foolish things like processed foods, fast food, and clothing, and CDs, and movie tickets, and all of those things that I spent money frivolously on when I was younger. And when you spend too much money on those types of things, it causes you to be very paycheck to paycheck. So I underestimated the cost of ignoring financial basics, living paycheck to paycheck, not being as frugal and as thoughtful with my money in my 20s as I could have and should have been, and not investing as early as I should have. Well, at least I had one thing going for me. I didn't take out any credit card debt. At least I was smart enough to avoid the credit card debt. So at least I can give 20-year-old me a pat on the back for not making that mistake. And my fifth mistake from my 20s would be renting an apartment too long. Now, there were probably some practical reasons why I did this, because for one thing, I moved from Ohio to Texas in my 20s, and I wasn't very situated or stable financially. And so I doubt anyone would have given me a loan in my 20s. Actually, it was hard for me to get a loan toward my late 20s when I finally did buy a house. So I guess I didn't make this mistake in my entire 20s, but if I could have bought a home sooner, I would have done that. And if I had done some of these other things that I mentioned in this list, I probably could have bought a house earlier in my 20s, because renting was one of the most foolish things I did. I never truly started to accumulate wealth until after I bought my home. And so by the time I hit my 30s, I had wisened up, fortunately, on some of these mistakes that I made in my 20s, and I started doing things right, toward the end of my 20s, early 30s. And by buckling down and avoiding those foolish purchases, watching how much I ate out, watching that I stayed in my budget on food and everything else, it allowed me to pay off my house in 7 years. I had actually set a goal of paying this house off in 12, but we were able to do it in about 8 years. And that is because I buckled down. A lot of the people that I knew, and a lot of people that I was friends with, and a lot of people that I worked with were going out to eat every day for lunch and not thinking anything of it, while a lot of people were going out for dates and enjoying, partying and drinks outside and food. And they were buying potato chips, and they were buying soda, and they were just living it up. I was buckling down, and I was avoiding those things. And to be real honest, it kind of sucked. It sucked at the time. But you know what? Those are the reasons why I paid my house off in 8 years. And so with all that being said, although I made a lot of financial mistakes that if I could go back and fix what I did, I would be in a better place financially. I did do a couple of things right, and one of those was avoiding credit card debt, and the second one was driving my old used car all the way through high school, all the way through college, and even into my first job. I drove that thing into the ground. But you know what? By doing that, I saved a lot of money. It allowed me to pay less insurance. It allowed me to not have a car payment in my, in those critical years, so that I could reinvest that money into paying off my house, into repaying my student loans, so yeah, that pretty much sums up this video. I hope that if you are under 30, that this will be beneficial to you, that you can look back at my stupid mistakes and hopefully not make those same mistakes. You might still make some of those mistakes. I don't know. I think that's what 20s are for. They're like for live and learn. Those are the live and learn years, okay? But I'm just sharing whatever wisdom I have with you in the hopes that maybe you might consider some of this if you are in your 20s. So if you're old like me, drop a comment down below and let all these youngsters know, what mistakes did you make when you were in your 20s? And if you're in your 20s, take advantage of my lessons learned as well as other viewers' lessons learned from their 20s. And hopefully you will make fewer mistakes in your 20s. Okay, guys, I'll catch you on the next one.